Namaste, this is Jo Shakti coming to you from Bali, and this is Ananda down here. Say hello everyone. So right now I would have been in Dubai, had things been a little different in the spinning of the universe, but here I am in Bali. And one of the beautiful students who I would have loved to share some time with asked me some questions, and a lot of her questions are relating to the energy body and labour and birth, and also to do with female sexuality and metaphysical energy, and also to do with preparation for the optimal birth experience. So the questions are so fascinating that I really would, I'm going to close my door, lots of more people don't come in on the video. So the questions were so fascinating, I thought it would be really nice to explore them, and also to get any of your feedback on these questions, because I don't have all of the answers, but I will share the questions and my thoughts on them. So firstly, the first question being, how do you prepare the body in pre-labor, so before surges start? How do you enable the body to be in like the optimal open energy for birth, and you know what can you do on the level of yoga to facilitate that being open for birth? And you know, I have heard this idea that, you know, birth is a marathon, and there's also this idea of like it being kind of a athletic type activity. And you know, for some women, labour and birth can go on for a long time, and it can be exhausting, and of course requires your full capacity of all levels of being. But as a prenatal yoga teacher, my thoughts on you know, what physical poses you need to do for birth, it really requires that you you know, you focus on creating space rather than opening. And in yoga, especially hatha yoga, we are quite focused on stretching and opening. The female body in pregnancy is opening by itself, and actually there are a lot of women who will face problems because they experience too much openness. So for example, in the pubis, which is this bone here, many women will experience pubis synthesis dysfunction, where because of the effects of relaxin hormone, which is flooded through the body in its pregnant state, then what will happen is there will be too much openness and separation, and that leads to incredible pain and suffering. So those women are really required to work on integration and strength as opposed to opening. So you have to be really careful with this whole concept of opening. I mean, as a yoga student over many decades, I really dedicated my life to being more flexible and being more bendy. Didn't get very far. I don't think I was born for the Yoga Olympics, but you know, the dedication was there and the practice, and you know, there is this kind of equation of being more open as to being more ready for yeah, Ananda? Is
my duckies ready?
Yeah, your duckies are ready. Do you want to go and see the duckies? So go and ask Daddy. So yeah, so where was I? So my one piece of advice would be don't get too obsessed as a hatha yoga practitioner of having to be open as a pregnant woman. You really when you do practice hatha yoga asana, just make sure that you don't have the focal point of stretching. There are some things like forward bends, for example, they're very nourishing for the nervous system, and that's all really great for a pregnant woman to have that physiological effects on the body to stretch and open. But any kind of deep stretching like yin yoga is contraindicated during pregnancy because of relaxin hormone and its effects on ligaments. So you can overstretch the body so easily, both prenatally as a pregnant woman with relaxin hormone and as a breastfeeding mother who still has plenty of relaxin. So, and until you've stopped breastfeeding, the idea of stretching is a kind of an opening. Be careful with that. Energetically, yes, creating space is my mantra for prenatal yoga. So creating space is, of course, it's physical. For example, anything that creates openness around in the body. Lateral stretches, for example, are amazing. It is brilliant. But you actually, in my opinion, like a good solid hatha yoga practice, doesn't need to overemphasize opening and stretching, and you won't necessarily, because it's like I kind of feel that the male traditional practices feel that that we should be preparing with lots and lots of malasana and open, otherwise we won't be able to birth. Which for me, of course, there's a woman who's fit and active is going to have a better experience, being more connected and embodied. There's no doubt about that. But I really, the main energy of birth is apana, it's downward flow, it's release, and that's a psychological state which you can enter through any process of surrender and letting go. So and that's by far more important than any kind of idea of like how many hours of malasana you need to do before labor in order to get through it, or how much bending and stretching you need to do. So it's a little bit of refocus of that question of what's actually important. So that's my response to like opening up the body. I would add that there are, I really truly believe that there are also other things you can do to contribute to being open. So the support I got during my labour was to go to acupuncture, and I had a beautiful acupuncturist who really helped me targeting my cervix through a series of acupuncture treatments, and I really felt that contributed to my being ready and my cervix opening before I felt intensity during the actual labour day. Acupuncture, very important. If you can get it, it's extremely nourishing, nurturing. So it also, I truly believe that being pregnant, although yes, what you do for yourself is important, but also receiving nourishment and nurture to support that process is really important. Okay, well, remember you've got some other ones too. Got one broken ducky here. Yeah, I've got the other ones, so focus on the other ones that are not broken. I have the duckies that we made with the clay. Okay, so this is
But I don't have any more clay.
Okay, well maybe we've got quite a lot, haven't you?
It's all dried out.
Yeah, well that's because it went in the oven. Can I just finish the questions for the ladies? Okay, so my second question is regarding the experience of the
So,
Kundalini flow
Mummy, what
as
can
a
I do
spiritual
with this?
practitioner connected to the source of flow that travels from the base, well, I guess from the base of the body,
Mummy,
from
what
its.
do I have to do with this?
You can put it in a bin. So, yeah, this is household and metaphysics, isn't it? So, the source of Kundalini flow from the big toe all the way up through the base chakra and up to Sahasrara. So this is, you know, from a spiritual practitioner who's able to connect to that Kundalini flow and energy. So you know, when we're connected to the source, we become an open channel, and there's a kind of free flow of energy traveling upwards. And this is, you know, this is Yoga 101. This is Hatha Yoga 101. Raja Yoga, you know, facilitating.
Mummy, my beak broke.
Okay, can you be quiet because I have to speak in the camera. Okay. So, you know, and really the question, let me just refer to the question regarding the Kundalini experience. So personally, I don't have first-hand experience of a Kundalini rise, and I didn't. Obviously, I being in the yoga world, I have, you know, I do have many colleagues who have had this experience. So I don't have much to say on how this affects pregnancy or birth, but what I do know about pregnancy and birth is that the energy of those siddhis, those magic powers of being a pregnant woman, and especially of birthing, are very different in quality. So, for example, a good way to connect to this feeling is when you are menstruating, you'll feel the spiritual flow is way different to its normal rise. Okay, so these siddhi experiences, this is my son. these siddhi, Caesar. Guys, you have to be quiet, okay? It's not allowed to talk, all right? Yes, hello. All right. So these experiences are more about a root rather than a rise. So my experience of a feminine rise is when the heart-womb connection expands like the pulsation of the universe. So for me, I haven't had the experience of the rise of Kundalini, but I've had this experience of the contraction and expansion of the universe within the field of the womb and the heart. So it's like the essence of the feminine body comes alive. And in birthing, the energy for me is basically about a plug into Mother Earth, and it just doesn't have the same quality as the rise. It's more of a root and a connection. So there's a deep innate desire to in birthing to be on the floor, and any woman who is in a labour experience and really is connected to her wisdom will get on the floor, because we're trying to ground and earth and channel our apana, downward flow, just really as if you're plugging into the core of the crystalline universe herself. So for me that's the quality of the Maha Siddhi of birth. It just doesn't have that same lifting up and connecting to something bigger than yourself, because you know it's more about rooting. So there's a, you know, it's a different quality of energy. But I don't have a lot of experience or any experience really with a Kundalini rise experience. So I'm sure there are other people better positioned to answer that question. So a little bit about, okay, so Yeah, and then related to that would be to do with and also if you think just related to the cervix for women. So for women who are birthing, of course, when we talk about in hatha yoga, there's always a seal in our mula bandha, which basically assists us to plug the energy from the earth so it doesn't leak out and escape, and so it can lift upwards. So when our cervix is literally open, we no longer have the capacity to physically or energetically seal the base, because my experience is that we're not lifting energy anymore. We're literally plugging into the earth vortex herself. So yeah, obviously the quality of the cervix, is magic in those times. Little bit more on birthing and our connection to our connection to sexuality. So when children, it's chaos. When we are birthing, it's a sexual act. So the sexuality of birthing has been stripped away through the medicalization of birth. But all the literature from the senior midwives, famously, there would be the American midwife, I've got Ina May Gaskin, had to look at my book, who understands that the sexuality of birth and being truly liberated in your own personal expression, Caesar, being liberated in your expression, like Caesar, to do whatever you want, and Ananda. That is, guys, I need you to go out and see Daddy. Okay, go and collect 10 leaves and come back. Ready, go. And I'll give you a prize. Okay. Ananda, go. And you can put them on the altar. And some flowers. So so when a woman is able to connect to her innate animal nature, and if she is stimulated by her partner, for example, in kissing and touch, sensual touch, nipple stimulation, that is one of the best pressing the fast forward button there is on labour and birth. So when you truly feel comfortable in yourself to be that inner, that inner goddess who has no boundaries, and who's truly able to express themselves fully in every way, which also includes sexual personal expression. That is what facilitates a real a pleasure-bound experience in labour. And I don't really have experience of that because the quality of my own labour and birth has been very internal, and that's the space that I held. So I don't really have that kind of dancing with someone else. For me, it wasn't really on my radar of what felt good and what I wanted, but I'm sure there are thousands and millions of women who have that experience. So it should be mandatory really to have some form of intimacy during labour. It's like a human right. All midwives know that. So and then these questions are so amazing, so thank you for the questions. So my question is from my practitioner who it talks about the tantric practice of unified connection, the cosmic union of a sexual practice which gives you that greater union and plug into the cosmos. So I have to say that when it comes to birthing, let's just finish her question here. she wondered if you know, so say like that you have established a sexual relationship which and a physical intimacy with someone else, which facilitates your ability to plug in that kind of tantric field. Then, you know, can you then apply some of that pre-existing experience and to your birth position to optimize your pleasure and to facilitate the best case birth scenario, and also looking at the quality of the dynamics, so understanding that apana, downward flow, is birthing, therefore how that would affect the position you chose to be in. And I don't have experience and don't know how to answer that question. I mean, my experience is very much just that. If your pelvis is in an open position, so if you are in a hands and knees position, if you are squatting, if you are hanging onto your partner, any of those positions, you know, physiologically facilitate birth, and that's just from the basic physical layer. But when it comes to optimizing your experience from a physical point of view, in terms of where you're positioned for birth, how you're positioned for birth, you don't need to plan that. You need to know, you don't need to have any preconceived ideas about it, or any plans or any ideas. Really, like any good yogi, you are required to plug into your intuition. So obviously knowing what the physiologically beneficial positions are, you can easily look those up. You know, that's just one labor and birth 101, active labor, of course. But knowing what you need and what your baby needs at any one point is a question of really linking into the baby. So where you physically need to be as a laboring woman, it really depends on where the baby is. So midwives will often have, they'll be able to kind of feel where the baby is and give you some advice. But my personal view on that is that if you are truly listening to your baby and yourself, that you'll basically get into that position anyway. Because we all have this kind of, well, not us all, but the dominant, obviously for, you know, in the last century, we're in this sort of paradigm of lying on our backs and sticking our feet in the air, and this absolutely ludicrous idea. Many women are not able to feel into the intuitive response to birthing, and they are disabled by all of that stuff we've seen and heard. So that's why any kind of yoga, and especially pregnancy yoga, and this constant return to home facilitation by a teacher is essential, because when it comes to birthing, it's about feeling. It's about just doing whatever feels right at the time. You know, there are things that are, you know, it's like sitting on a birthing ball, and certain movements. They say, for example, that back and forward movements in, you know, sort of the intense part of labour, as things progress quite, you know, and, you know, cervix starts to open 4, 5, 6 centimetres, the back and forwards movements are great. And then eventually you start more in a sort of diagonal flow as the baby descends. And this is all physiological, as the baby descends, and you know, I don't have the correct terminology, but as the baby descends and turns and does all the, you know, all the maneuvers that they need to do to literally get it out of the female pelvis, which is magical. And you know, so just that, don't plan those kind of things. You know, learn. No, my dogs are eating my rug. Householder yoga. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's bad. I don't want you to do that now. Back. So yeah, having the knowledge about, you know, active birth positions, that's really enough. That's all you need. And of course, I'd love to know more on. Wow, it's a bit wet. I'd love to have more information on women's experiences, on literally like the experience of you know, Tantra in action in labour, and how your previous experiences might inform your possible positioning in a birthing capacity. But it's a question I never really. I'm so thankful that these are the kind of questions that that people are asking me. I mean, wow, what a job. And Caesar's going to say, ow, you just stood on my toe. You guys go downstairs and take your shoes off, please. And Caesar and Ananda have brought some flowers for the altar. Okay, lots of love from Bali and the frangipanis and the wet leaves that have just arrived in my room. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Say bye-bye, Ananda.
Bye bye.